Lonely CEO. Thought he was meeting a model on a blind date, but it's a poor single mom who stole his. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation filled the elegant restaurant in downtown New York City. Crystal glasses glimmered under golden light, and the scent of roasted herbs drifted through the air. Every table looked like a painting, and yet Mia Anderson felt completely out of place. Her dress was borrowed, her shoes a size too small, and the little pearl earring she wore had belonged to her late mother. She stood at the entrance, clutching her phone, whispering under her breath, Table 7, please let this be right." She had promised her coworker and only friend, Jessica, that she would show up for this blind date. "He is a photographer," Jessica had said. "A good one, and kind, too." Mia was nervous, but curious. After all, it had been 3 years since her divorce. 3 years of raising her little boy, Lucas, alone. Her eyes scanned the tables until they landed on a sharply dressed man sitting by the window. His posture was confident, his dark hair slightly tousled, his watch gleaming against his wrist. He seemed lost in thought, scrolling on his phone. "That must be him," she murmured, forcing a smile before walking over. "Hi, you must be Daniel, right?" "I am Mia," she said brightly, holding out her hand. The man looked up, startled. For a split second, his deep blue eyes flickered with confusion. Ethan Cole had been expecting someone else entirely, a tall blonde model his friend had set him up with. But the woman standing before him was different. She was nervous, real, and had the kind of warmth that pierced through the cold shell he carried everywhere. He opened his mouth to correct her, but then paused. His phone buzzed. A text from his friend read, "The model canceled. Sorry, man." Something in him softened. Maybe it would not hurt to stay. "Right," he said finally, a faint smile forming. "Blind dates are unpredictable." Mia laughed awkwardly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Tell me about it. Jessica practically forced me to come. I almost canceled twice. Anyway, I am glad I did." "Me too," he said, surprised by how much he meant it. The waiter appeared, placing 2 glasses of water on the table. Mia picked hers up quickly, almost knocking it over. "Sorry," she whispered, cheeks flushed. Ethan chuckled. "No harm done." As they talked, Mia mentioned her job at the Midtown Hotel, her long shifts, her dream of one day opening a small bakery called Little Wings. "My son made me this," she said shyly, pulling a tiny paper airplane from her purse. "He said it brings luck." Ethan studied the paper plane carefully. Its folds were uneven, one wing shorter than the other, but it carried a kind of innocence that made his chest tighten. He had not felt that warmth in years, not since his mother's passing. "What do you do?" she asked. "I work in tech," he replied simply. He could have said, "Chief Executive Officer of Cole Digital Media," but he did not. "Not tonight." Mia smiled. "That sounds complicated. I can barely handle my phone." He laughed, genuinely this time. "Maybe I can help with that." Minutes stretched into an hour. They shared small stories, small laughs, and an easy silence that felt safe. For a moment, it did not matter that one of them lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and the other shared a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. Then Mia's phone buzzed. She glanced down and froze. The message from Jessica read, "Where are you? Daniel has been waiting at the cafe across the street." Her heart sank. Slowly, she looked up, mortified. "You are not Daniel, are you?" Ethan shook his head softly. "No, I am not." Oh my God," she whispered, standing up so quickly that her chair scraped the floor. "I am so sorry. I cannot believe I just—" "Mia, wait," Ethan said, rising too. "It is all right." But she was already reaching for her coat, her face burning. "This is so embarrassing. I have to go." He watched her hurry out into the cool evening, her small figure disappearing into the glow of the streetlights. For a long time, he just stood there, holding the tiny paper airplane she had left behind on the table. He turned it over in his hand, a faint smile touching his lips. It had been the most unexpected mistake of his life, and for reasons he could not yet explain, he hoped it would not be the last time he saw her. The next morning, the city woke to the soft hum of traffic, and a pale winter Sunday. Inside a small apartment above a laundromat, Mia stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing her hair into a loose ponytail. Her eyes were tired from another sleepless night. The scene from the restaurant kept replaying in her mind: the wrong table, the wrong man, the way he had smiled when she realized her mistake. She groaned softly, pressing a hand over her face. "I cannot believe I did that," she whispered. From the small bedroom, a sleepy voice called out, "Mommy, are we late again?" Mia turned, smiling despite herself. "Good morning, buddy." "Not yet. But if we do not hurry, we will be." Lucas was 6 years old, all big brown eyes and endless curiosity. He padded out of the room wearing mismatched socks and holding the folded paper airplane she had given him weeks ago. "Did it bring you luck last night?" he asked. Mia hesitated, then knelt down. "Maybe not the kind I expected," she said with a gentle laugh. "But I met someone interesting." "Like a friend?" he asked. "Something like that." She tucked the little airplane back into her purse, kissed his forehead, and hurried him out the door. By the time she reached the Midtown hotel where she worked, the lobby was already bustling. The scent of polished marble and fresh coffee filled the air. She tied her apron and headed to her station behind the reception desk. Her supervisor, Carol, shot her a look. "You are 3 minutes late again." "I know, I am sorry," Mia said quickly. The bus was packed. Carol sighed but softened. "I need you to cover the breakfast rush. After that, you can help in the pastry kitchen. The chef is short-staffed." "Thank you," Mia said, relief washing over her. Baking was her escape, the only part of the job that still felt like her dream. Hours passed in a blur of check-ins, coffee orders, and polite smiles. But between the noise and the rush, Ethan's face kept flashing in her mind. The warmth in his eyes, the kindness behind his quiet laugh. She shook her head, scolding herself. "He probably forgot about me already," she murmured under her breath. Across town, Ethan Cole sat in his glass-walled office on the 32nd floor of Cole Digital Media. The skyline stretched endlessly behind him, glittering with morning light. His assistant, Ryan, was reading through his schedule. "You have a product briefing at 10, a meeting with the board at noon, and lunch with investors at 1:30. Ethan stared at the city below but heard none of it. His thoughts were miles away, back at that restaurant, back to the woman who had mistaken him for someone else and somehow made him feel human again. "Cancel the investor lunch," he said suddenly. Ryan blinked. "Cancel? Sir, that meeting—" "Reschedule it," Ethan interrupted. "Next week." Ryan hesitated but nodded. "Understood." "Oh." When the office door closed, Ethan leaned back in his chair, letting out a long breath. For years, his life had followed one straight, sterile line: work, meetings, charity events, more work. But that night had felt different, unexpectedly alive. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out the small paper airplane Mia had left behind. He set it on the desk beside his computer. It looked fragile and out of place among the sleek devices and documents, yet somehow it grounded him. Meanwhile, back at the hotel kitchen, Mia slipped on an apron and began mixing dough for croissants. The air smelled of butter and sugar. For the first time that day, she felt calm. As she rolled the dough, the head chef passed by and said, "You have a good hand, Anderson. You should think about doing this full-time." She smiled faintly. Maybe one day. When her shift ended that evening, she stopped by the small park on 10th Avenue. Lucas was waiting with his sitter, waving the little airplane in circles. "Mommy, it can fly higher now," he said proudly. Mia knelt beside him, her eyes soft. "That is because you keep believing in it." The sun dipped low, spilling orange light across the park. For a brief, beautiful moment, everything felt right, simple, quiet, and whole. But in a tall building just a few blocks away, Ethan watched that same sunset from his office window, holding the paper airplane between his fingers. He smiled, unaware that just beneath the golden glow, the woman who had changed his night was sitting on a park bench with her son, dreaming of a better tomorrow. Two people, one city. One small mistake that was beginning to feel like destiny. The following week brought gray skies and endless drizzle. Mia pushed through the wind as she walked home from the hotel, her worn shoes splashing through puddles. The city lights blurred in the rain, and her reflection in a shop window looked as tired as she felt. Life was steady, predictable, and exhausting. But when she reached into her purse for her keys, her fingers brushed against the little paper airplane. She smiled faintly. "Maybe that was not such a bad night after all," she whispered. Across the city, Ethan sat in a quiet cafe tucked between two bookstores. He had chosen the place on purpose, small, warm, filled with the scent of coffee and old wood. His laptop sat open, but his attention was elsewhere. For days, he had been unable to stop thinking about Mia. Something about her unfiltered honesty had cracked through the polished world he lived in. He found himself searching for her without meaning to. Every time he passed a hotel lobby or a pastry shop, his eyes lingered, hoping for a glimpse of her face. Finally, after a week, fate or something like it intervened. It happened on a Thursday morning. Ethan was walking through the hotel corridor after an early business breakfast with investors. As he reached the reception area, a familiar voice caught his ear. "Yes, ma'am. I can help you with that right away." He froze. The tone was warm, patient, and unmistakably hers. Mia stood behind the desk, hair tied back neatly, her uniform pressed but faded. For a moment, he simply watched her, torn between surprise and an odd surge of happiness. She turned and her eyes widened. "Oh, it is you," Ethan smiled, a little sheepish. "I think I owe you an apology for letting you believe I was someone else." Mia's cheeks flushed. "No, I am the one who should be sorry." I stormed out like a fool. "You were not a fool," he said gently. "You were honest. That is rare." The lobby was busy, but the air around them felt still. After a pause, he asked, "Would you let me buy you coffee? As an apology. No mix-ups this time." She hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. Then she nodded. "All right, but only if it is from the cafe down the street. It is cheaper." He laughed softly. "Deal." Minutes later, they sat across from each other in a cozy corner of the same cafe where he had waited earlier that morning. She stirred her drink nervously. "You said you work in tech, right?" "Yes," he answered, choosing his words carefully. "Mostly creative design and digital marketing." "Sounds fancy," she teased. "Do you like it?" He paused, surprised by the question. No one ever asked if he liked it. They only cared about results, contracts, profits. "Sometimes," he said finally. "But lately, I am not sure what I like anymore." Mia smiled knowingly. "Then maybe you need new inspiration." They talked for nearly an hour. She told him about her son, about waking up before dawn to pack lunches and still being late, about baking bread in her tiny oven because it made the apartment smell like hope. Ethan listened, really listened, for the first time in a long while. When they finished, she checked the time and gasped. "I have to get back to work." She stood quickly, adjusting her coat. "Thank you for the coffee, and for being kind." He rose too. "Can I see you again?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Maybe, if the universe allows another mistake." As she walked away, Ethan watched her disappear into the rain, a quiet certainty blooming inside him. This was no mistake. Later that night, Mia found a small card tucked inside her purse. She must have missed it when she gathered her things. It read, "Little Wings deserves to fly." Below the message was the name of a local art market and a date Saturday. Mia traced the handwriting with her finger, her heart fluttering. She did not know how he had slipped it there, but somehow she knew Ethan was inviting her into something more than coincidence. She looked at the paper airplane on her bedside table and whispered, "Maybe fate just wants a second chance." Saturday arrived with clear skies, the kind that made the city look softer than usual. Mia stood at the entrance of the Riverside Art Market, clutching a small box of pastries she had baked the night before. The air smelled of roasted coffee and rain-soaked wood. Rows of stalls lined the promenade, filled with paintings, candles, and handmade crafts. It was her first time there, and she felt both excited and nervous. Her eyes scanned the crowd, unsure if she was even supposed to be here. Maybe she had misunderstood the message. But then she saw him, Ethan, standing by a booth of vintage cameras, wearing a casual jacket, and that same quiet smile that had been haunting her thoughts all week. "You came?" he said, relief clear in his voice. I almost did not, she admitted. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was, he replied softly. But the good kind. They walked through the market together. Ethan stopped at every booth, asking about her baking, her son, her dreams. He listened with genuine curiosity, the way people do when they are not pretending. At one point, they paused near a group of children painting on small canvases. One of them handed Mia a brush, urging her to join. She laughed, dipping the tip in pale blue paint. You are a natural, Ethan said. Hardly, she replied, but her smile said otherwise. When the afternoon sun began to fade, he guided her toward a small outdoor cafe overlooking the river. They sat under a striped umbrella as the sky turned golden. This place is beautiful, she said, looking out over the water. It is one of my favorites, he answered. I come here when I need to remember what matters. She looked at him curiously. And what does matter to you? He hesitated, searching for the right words. Lately, honesty, real people, the kind who do not wear masks. Mia tilted her head. You sound like a man who has worn too many. Her words caught him off guard, but he smiled. Maybe I have. They shared dinner, simple sandwiches, warm soup, and a slice of lemon pie they split in half. The conversation flowed easily, but beneath the laughter, something deeper was forming. He wanted to tell her the truth, to say who he really was, but the fear of losing this fragile connection kept him silent. When they finished eating, she glanced at her watch. I should go. Lucas will be waiting. Let me walk you, he said. They strolled toward the subway entrance. The streets shimmered with the reflection of city lights on wet pavement. She hugged the pastry box against her chest, trying to ignore the way her heart raced beside him. Thank you for today, she said, as they reached the corner. Thank you for coming, he replied. For a moment, they simply stood there, caught between words unsaid. Then, from across the street, a tall blonde woman called out, Ethan! There you are! Mia froze. The woman was dressed in designer clothes, her heels clicking sharply against the sidewalk. She walked straight to him and looped her arm through his without hesitation. You disappeared after the meeting, she said. We are all heading to the gala tonight. Come on, everyone is waiting. Ethan's posture stiffened. Sophia, this is not... But Mia had already stepped back, her face pale. Ethan, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. You told me your name was... Never mind. Sophia's eyes darted between them, confusion turning into recognition. Oh, I see. I did not realize you had company. Mia swallowed hard, the truth beginning to unravel in her chest. You work with her? Yes, Ethan said quietly. We have known each other for years. Of course you have, Mia said, forcing a brittle smile. It makes sense now. Before he could explain, she turned and walked into the crowd, her steps quick and unsteady. He called after her, but his voice was swallowed by the rush of traffic and the noise of the city. That night, as the river reflected the glittering skyline, Ethan stood alone on the promenade, holding the little box of pastries she had left behind. Inside was a small cookie, shaped like a paper airplane. He held it in his hand and whispered to himself, I should have told her the truth. In the quiet of that evening, both of them felt the same ache, the beginning of something real colliding with the weight of secrets not yet spoken. The days after the art market felt heavier than rain. Mia threw herself into work, refusing to let her thoughts drift toward the man who had turned out to be someone entirely different. Still, no matter how hard she tried, Ethan's face lingered his voice, his kindness, the way he had listened. Every small kindness now felt tainted by a lie. One evening, as she locked up the hotel kitchen, Carol approached her with a clipboard. Mia, there is a catering request for tomorrow's charity gala at the Cole Foundation. They ordered your pastries specifically. Mia's breath caught. The Cole Foundation? Yes, Carol said, flipping through papers. Apparently, someone there insisted on it. Is that a problem? Mia forced a smile. No, of course not. It is just work. That night, she baked until dawn, her hands moving through the motions while her mind wrestled with what she would say if she saw him again. When morning came, she packed the trays and delivered them to the event hall herself. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and glass. Waiters in black moved swiftly between tables. And there, across the crowd, stood Ethan Cole, no longer the man from the cafe, but the commanding figure from news headlines and magazine covers. His suit was immaculate, his voice calm as he greeted donors. Mia froze behind a pillar, her chest tightening. Now she understood everything, the expensive watch, the careful words, the mystery. He was not a man trying to live simply. He was a man who had everything and had chosen to hide it. She turned to leave, but a staff member stopped her. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you with the pastry service? The guest of honor just asked to meet the baker." Before she could respond, a spotlight shifted toward the stage. The host's voice echoed through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Ethan Cole, Chief Executive Officer of Cole Digital Media and founder of the Cole Foundation." Applause filled the room. Mia's vision blurred. She backed away slowly, praying no one would notice her. But Ethan did. His eyes found her instantly, standing near the service entrance, holding the pastry box against her chest. The applause faded into silence in his ears. Without thinking, he stepped down from the stage. "Mia," he called, his voice low but urgent. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "Do not. Please, do not say my name here." "Oh, where? I never meant to lie," he began, but she cut him off. "You let me believe you were someone ordinary, someone real. Was it fun to pretend? To see how the other half lives?" The guests had turned, whispers rippling through the room. Sophia, standing nearby, crossed her arms, her expression cold. "Ethan, we have a schedule to keep," she said sharply, but he did not look away from Mia. "This was never a game," he said quietly. "I just wanted something honest." Mia's voice trembled. "Honest? You built our entire connection on a lie." She placed the pastry box on a nearby table and stepped back. "I do not belong in your world, Ethan. And now I know why." He reached for her, but she moved away. The soft sound of her heels faded down the marble hall as she disappeared through the side door. The crowd murmured, confused. Sophia whispered something to a board member, her smile polite but sharp. Ethan stood alone under the golden light, the pastry box open beside him. Inside was a single cookie shaped like a paper airplane, broken clean down the middle. He closed his hand around it, his heart heavy with the truth that had finally caught up to him. For the first time in years, he had everything and felt utterly empty. The next morning, the headlines spread across every business page. CEO Ethan Cole, seen at charity gala with mystery woman. Photos from the night before showed Mia standing in the background, hair expression unreadable. By noon, the story had climbed to the top of every social media feed. At the hotel, whispers followed her wherever she went. Coworkers stared, half curious, half jealous. Carol pulled her aside in the staff room. "Mia, are you in trouble? People are saying you were with him at the gala." Mia's stomach tightened. "I was there for work. That is all." "Still," Carol said gently, "you should be careful. People love to twist stories, especially when money is involved." "Ah." Mia nodded, grateful but shaken. She spent the rest of the day avoiding the lobby television and the hotel guests' curious looks. By evening, she went straight home, locking the door behind her. The paper airplane sat on the kitchen counter, next to Lucas's drawings. She stared at it for a long time before whispering, "I wish I had never walked into that restaurant." But life did not stop for heartbreak. She still had bills, rent, and a growing boy to care for. So she did what she always did, kept moving. Across the city, Ethan sat in his office, the curtains drawn, the world outside blurring into gray. Sophia stood near his desk, scrolling through her tablet. "The board wants a statement," she said briskly. "We can spin it as a charitable interaction. Maybe say she was a bakery partner for the foundation." Ethan's jaw tightened. "No," Sophia frowned. "No? Ethan, the press is circling. Investors are nervous. If we do not clarify, they will assume the worst." "Then let them," he said quietly. "I will not use her to clean up my image." Sophia's tone softened, but her words carried weight. "You are letting your feelings cloud your judgment. She is not from our world." Ethan looked up sharply. "Exactly. That is what makes her better than this world." Sophia exhaled, defeated. "Fine, but do not expect the board to understand." She left without another word. When the office door closed, Ethan leaned back, rubbing his temples. He had built an empire on precision, on control, and yet a single moment of honesty had unraveled everything. Still, he knew he could not let her vanish from his life without trying to make things right. That evening, he found himself standing in front of the small apartment building on West 38th Street. Rain had started to fall, soft and steady. He climbed the stairs, rehearsing what to say, but when he reached her door, the words disappeared. Mia opened it halfway, her expression guarded. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," he said, "to explain." "There is nothing left to explain," she replied. "You lied to me. You had a choice, and you let me walk into your world blind." "I know," he said, "and I hate myself for it. I thought if I told you who I really was, you would look at me differently." She crossed her arms. "You are right. I would have. But not for the reason you think. I would have seen a man too afraid to trust anyone." Ethan's voice was low. "That is exactly who I was." For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Lucas peeked from behind the doorway, clutching his paper airplane. "Mommy, who is that?" Mia turned slightly. "It is just someone leaving." Ethan crouched down to the boy's level, his voice gentle. "Hey there, that is a great airplane you have." Lucas smiled shyly. "It flies high." "I bet it does," Ethan said softly. "You should keep flying it." Mia's throat tightened. "You should go, Ethan," he nodded, stepping back. "I am sorry, Mia, for everything." After he left, Mia closed the door and pressed her back against it, her heart pounding. Outside, Ethan stood in the rain, looking up at the light glowing from her window. For the first time in years, he felt powerless, and yet somehow, strangely hopeful. The next morning, a news segment played quietly on the lobby television at the hotel. It showed Ethan at a press conference, standing before microphones. "I owe someone an apology," he said, his voice steady. "The woman in those photos is not a publicity stunt or a mistake. She reminded me of what honesty looks like, and I failed her. I hope one day she can forgive me." Mia froze, tears filling her eyes. Around her, the room went silent. For the first time, the truth was out not from gossip or press, but from him. And though she said nothing, a small spark of forgiveness began to grow inside her, fragile but real. A full week passed after the press conference. The city had already moved on to newer stories, but for Mia, the silence felt heavier than before. She had watched his public apology once, maybe twice, but she could not bring herself to watch it again. The words were sincere. She could feel that, but sincerity did not erase pain. Still, something inside her had softened. She saw the way her coworkers had looked at her differently since the news. No one whispered now. No one gossiped. They respected her for walking away with dignity. But late at night, when the world quieted, she still found herself wondering if Ethan had meant everything he said. Life pressed forward. She worked longer hours, determined to save enough to finally apply for a small booth at the weekend market. Lucas was her joy through it all. His laughter filled their tiny apartment like sunlight. One evening, while helping him fold paper airplanes, he asked, "Mommy, will the nice man from the rain come back?" Mia's hands stilled. "I do not think so, sweetheart. Sometimes people come into our lives just to teach us something." Lucas frowned. "Like what?" "Like how to be brave, how to forgive." Across town, Ethan was changing too. He had stepped down from several public appearances and focused instead on a new project, one he had not told anyone about. He spent long evenings sketching ideas and writing plans, his mind clearer than it had been in years. He wanted to build something that mattered, something beyond profit. Late one night, Ryan, his assistant, found him in the office surrounded by drafts and pastry catalogs. "Sir, it is almost midnight. Are you planning a restaurant?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Something like that. I am starting a community initiative, funding small food businesses run by single parents. The first one will be a bakery." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Does she know?" "Not yet," Ethan said softly. "I want it to be her choice, not my favor." A month later, Mia received a letter in the mail. It was printed on thick paper with a gold emblem she did not recognize. The letter read, "The Little Wings Initiative invites you to apply for a micro-grant supporting local bakers and single-parent entrepreneurs." She almost dismissed it, assuming it was another scam, until she saw the signature at the bottom. Cole. Her breath caught. For a long moment, she stared at it, unsure whether to laugh or cry. 2 days later, curiosity overcame fear. She filled out the form, describing her dream bakery, how it would serve low-cost pastries to kids on their way to school, how she wanted to name it Little Wings, after Lucas's favorite paper plane. She did not expect a reply, but she got one. A week later, she received a call. A calm voice said, "Miss Anderson, your proposal has been approved. We would like you to visit the downtown location to finalize details." When she arrived, the space took her breath away, a bright, sunlit corner shop with fresh paint, new ovens, and a sign in the window that read, "Coming soon, Little Wings Bakery." She turned slowly, and there he was, Ethan standing by the counter, no suit, no cameras, just a man with tired eyes and hope in his smile. "I did not want to interfere," he said quietly. "This is yours. I only gave it wings." Mia felt tears welling. "You did not have to do this." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to. You believed in me when I did not deserve it. Let me believe in you now." For the first time in weeks, she let herself smile, small, trembling, but real. Maybe this was not an ending after all. Maybe it was the start of something worth fighting for. The following weekend, the Little Wings Bakery opened its doors for the first time. Morning light streamed through the glass windows, filling the space with warmth. The scent of fresh bread and vanilla filled the air as people from the neighborhood wandered in, curious and smiling. A soft sign above the counter read, "Baked with Hope." Mia stood behind the counter in her white apron, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the first tray of pastries on display. Lucas sat by the window, proudly handing out folded paper airplanes to each customer. "For luck," he said with a grin. Ethan arrived quietly, not as the millionaire everyone knew, but as a man carrying a box of flowers. "I thought the place could use a little color," he said. Mia looked up, eyes shining with surprise. "You came. I would not miss it for the world," he replied. For a moment neither spoke. Then he added softly, "You did this, Mia. You built something beautiful. You proved that kindness is stronger than status." She smiled, her voice gentle. "Maybe, but none of this would have happened if you had not believed in me." He shook his head. "No, I just gave you a door. You walk through it." The bakery filled quickly. Children laughed, families talked, and the soft hum of conversation wrapped the room in warmth. Ethan helped serve coffee while Mia sold out of her first batch of pastries before noon. When the last customer left, she leaned against the counter, breathless with joy. "Can you believe this?" she said, laughing. Ethan smiled. "I can. I always could." She looked at him, her expression tender but hesitant. "Ethan, I do not know what happens next. I am still scared." "So am I," he admitted. "But maybe we can be scared together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, the same paper airplane she had once left on a restaurant table. It was worn, its edges soft from being carried too long. "I kept it," he said. "It reminded me of the night everything changed." Her eyes filled with tears. "You are still holding on to that?" He nodded. "Because it led me back to you." The afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the counter as Mia took the paper airplane from his hand and placed it beside the cash register. "Then let us keep it here," she said, smiling, "so everyone remembers how far a little mistake can fly." Outside, the sign above the bakery door swayed gently in the breeze, catching the light, "Little Wings." And for the first time, both of them felt that maybe, just maybe, this was the second chance they had been waiting for. A full year later, spring returned to the city. The Little Wings Bakery had become a beloved corner of the neighborhood, where the scent of sugar and cinnamon drifted onto the street each morning. The window was filled with paper airplanes made by children who stopped by after school. Every one of them carried a small handwritten message, words like hope, love, and believe. Inside, Mia wiped her hands on her apron and smiled as Lucas arranged cupcakes on the display shelf. He was taller now, more confident, humming to himself as he worked. "Mommy," he said proudly, "we sold out again before noon. That means we get to bake twice as much tomorrow," she said, laughing. The bell over the door chimed, and when Mia looked up, Ethan stepped inside. He was carrying a bouquet of white tulips, the same kind that had decorated the bakery on its opening day. He looked calm, certain, and more at peace than she had ever seen him. "Morning, partner," he said softly. She smiled. "You are early. The investors' meeting is not until later." "I know," he said. "But there is something I wanted to do first." He walked to the counter, reaching into his pocket. When he opened his hand, there was a small silver ring shaped like a folded paper airplane. "I had this made," he said, "for the woman who taught me that truth and kindness can build more than any empire ever could." For a long moment, Mia could not speak. Her eyes glistened as she looked at the ring, then at him. "Ethan," he took her hand gently. "Mia Anderson, you turned one small mistake into the best thing that ever happened to me. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, her voice breaking into a smile. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Applause erupted from the few customers inside the bakery. Lucas ran to them, his arms wrapping around their legs. "Does this mean we are a family now?" he asked eagerly. Ethan knelt down and smiled. "We already are." Mia laughed through her tears, pulling them both into an embrace. Outside the window, the afternoon sunlight poured across the words painted on the glass, "Little Wings Bakery." Later that evening, as the city lights shimmered across the river, Ethan and Mia stood outside the bakery door, locking up for the night. She looked up at him and whispered, "Do you ever think about that night? The wrong table, the wrong name?" He smiled, his arm wrapping around her shoulders. "Every single day. It was the best mistake I ever made." And with that, they walked down the quiet street together, hand in hand, their laughter echoing softly through the evening air. Two souls who had found love, not through perfection, but through the beauty of being real.